Hey, what's going on? This is TNS Time and Space, and I would like to welcome you to a new episode at long last of W. Hollis Boxing. Once again, we are going to break down different articles, pre and post fight analysis, and all things boxing, basically. But just to get into it, I stumbled upon a format that I use for one of my other YouTube channels, which is Talk and Scroll, which that's the name of the other channel. But before we get into that, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you hit that bell notification so you can be made aware of any time that I create new content. But anyway, now that the housekeeping is done, as I said, I've decided to incorporate a new format, which is my talk and scroll format, where I will look at different articles and offer commentary. So there'll also be fight breakdowns or what have you. So I wanted to take a look at this particular article on one of my favorite boxing websites, which is Boxing Scene. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. But this is in regards to Ryan Garcia. He mentioned Isaac Cruz. I assume that everyone watching this video is a somewhat knowledgeable boxing fan, so of course I shouldn't have to do any introductions about who Isaac Cruz is or who Ryan Garcia is. Ryan Garcia actually recently made a comeback from a period of inactivity due to mental health issues and surgery, as far as I'm aware of. But anyway, he called out Isaac Cruz. Isaac Cruz is well known for giving Gervonta Tank Davis a tougher than expected fight. So Cruz definitely elevated his stock in defeat. Some people believe that he pulled off the upset against Tank Davis. I'm not one of them. I do believe that it was a 115, 113, 116, 112 type of fight where the underdog sort of gets extra credit in the eyes of boxing fans or in the eyes of the public because they are the underdog and because everyone expected Cruz to lose by highlight reel knockout. It was a surprise when he didn't. So anyway, he and Ryan Garcia were linked as far as having a possible fight. So I just wanted to scroll through and take a look at this article and also the comments. So you see that Ryan Garcia said, Cruz, let's get it on. Everyone else has a fight. If you win against Gamboa, I say we get that one on next. Now, Garcia has been criticized, and somewhat rightly so, for not making fights. Basically, he's mentioned Tank Davis, and obviously it's not so simple as, confirming a fight via Twitter or Instagram. For those that don't know, I assume that we should, but just in case you don't know, it's not that simple. It's not a matter of calling someone out as if, you're in school or something like that to say, meet me at 3 o'clock in the cafeteria or, meet me at 3 o'clock by the flagpole. Fights aren't made that easily. There's certainly the business aspect of it, whether we like it or not. And these guys have promoters. The promoters are the reason why we even know who they are a lot of times, part of breaking into the business. And also, too, just to go off on a brief tangent, even if you're a boxer who is managing yourself, you're going to have to make some concessions to gain access to top fighters. Like, say you're a talented fighter who manages himself or herself, you're going to have to establish relationships, and the promoters, whether we like it or not, they are the gatekeepers. But anyway, I just wanted to speak on why a lot of these call outs don't lead to fights coming to fruition. So that is frustrating. But anyway, Ryan Garcia mentioned Isaac Cruz. There was definitely discussion of the fight, but they fight on different platforms. Garcia on DAZN, Cruz is associated with PBC, Premier Boxing Champions. But that would be a fight that I would like to see. But ultimately, I want to scroll ahead to some of the comments. So I wanted to respond to the comments. They weren't directed to me, but let's pretend that they were. So this particular comment says, Golden Boy messed up any fights with PBC when they wouldn't let Munguia come fight in Showtime. So PBC will not let Cruz go over to the zone and fight. Yeah, unfortunately, I know that Jaime Munguia was in discussion to face Jamal Charlo. I get those mixed up sometimes. Jamal, the middleweight Charlo, but it didn't come to fruition. Unfortunately, they're different promotional entities. They fight on different platforms. I would love for them to find a way to share. I mean, without knowing the intimate details of the business, it seems like there would be some way to share. This person said, I love the breakdown. Bring on part two. That's definitely forthcoming. Thank you for checking that out. I did do a brief 1 minute breakdown of Garcia Cruz just stylistically. So, oh, actually, you know what? Let me open this up so that we can look at these in order because I think this is working its way backwards. So, someone said, didn't Ryan say no more call outs? He did, but he's a social media star. So essentially, him saying no more call outs would be the equivalent of Garcia saying no more posting. And we know that's not going to happen because a great deal of his popularity, actually all of it, for the most part, until he advanced his career beyond prospect status, ultimately it's come down to his social media presence. He's a social media superstar. Some people use that to ridicule him, but like it or not, he has a large legion of fans, and he's certainly adapted to today's climate, whether you like it or not. So he said, didn't this baby just say last week he wasn't calling anyone out, or was he just scared of Tank? Again, I don't think it's simply a matter of being afraid. There's a lot of money on the line, and it's more than just Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia. There are more people involved. So Ryan said, Cruz was a C-class fighter when Tank fought him, but Ryan wants to fight him now. That's something that boxers do that I've never understood, to be honest. I never understood why they would criticize their potential competition because, if anything, when you win, when you beat that person, you're tarnishing your own potential victory. So I never understood that. Ryan, stop it. Your handlers aren't putting you in with a live dog, let alone a top dog at 135 at the moment. That could be true. I think that Luke Campbell was if not elite, he was definitely a solid top 10 fighter. So it's not as if Ryan Garcia hasn't fought a top 10 level lightweight before. He's fought that, level of competition, not all the time, but to be fair, a lot of these guys in the top five haven't fought each other. And I also want to point out that a lot of times I'll see in these boxing chat rooms and amongst fans that you have the elite fighters or you have the well-known fighters, and anyone that you don't know is a bum. I don't agree with that. I certainly don't agree with that. There's plenty of Isaac Cruzes out there who haven't gotten their opportunity. So prior to the Tank Davis fight, a lot of people would have said that Cruz was a bum. They would have said, oh, look at Tank Davis cherry picking. But you see how that turned out. So I just want to point that out. Garcia is not ready for a world-class guy like Cruz. Cruz took 4 rounds off Tank. He'd batter Garcia. That is interesting. I want to read a few comments before I get into the stylistic matchup of Garcia and Cruz, because one thing I want to point out is that Ryan Garcia is perceived as a pretty boy, whereas Cruz is perceived as a real fighter. And a lot of that has to do with their appearance. It's not even to do with their skill. It's just that Ryan Garcia looks like a model, whereas Cruz looks like what you would perceive as a real fighter. We can't necessarily go by appearances. But anyway, I'd enjoy seeing Cruz knock this Garcia to oblivion, almost as much as seeing Khan being obliterated by Bradis Prescott. I actually don't see it that way. I believe that if Ryan Garcia had a China chin, then he would have been knocked out by Luke Campbell. Now, Luke Campbell's not a huge puncher, but again, you're saying that Ryan Garcia has a China chin or a glass jaw. So he took a big shot from Luke Campbell and came back and won. But anyway, Cruz might be the worst style matchup for Ryan at the moment. Oh well. I actually believe it's vice versa. I think that Ryan Garcia would be a bad matchup for Isaac Cruz. So in regards to the comment of Isaac Cruz battering Ryan Garcia, I will do a breakdown video of that. I certainly will do that, and I appreciate the shout out on my breakdown. But Cruz is 5'4", and I know that height isn't everything. However, we've seen Ryan Garcia face shorter fighters, maybe not to the caliber of Isaac Cruz, but we've seen how Ryan Garcia handles short pressure fighters. We know that if Cruz is 5'4" and Ryan is 5'10", and he holds his head up high, Cruz is going to have to reach to get to Ryan Garcia's chin, or he's going to have to close distance to get to his body. We know for a fact that Cruz is not going to be able to sit outside and outbox Ryan Garcia. You know, for all of the criticism of Ryan Garcia's chin and everything and his defense, he really hasn't had anybody touch his chin. Now, that's not to say it couldn't happen, but let's scroll through some more comments. I guess he is saying this in order to save face. He knew that his performance was garbage in his last outing against the overmatched, cherry-picked opponent he fought. Emmanuel to go is not necessarily elite, but I'd say he's a solid top 15 to top 20 guy at worst. And also, I think it's worth mentioning that when you have a guy with long arms and, you know, has some quickness, to go is not a bum. He actually fought to survive, if you think about it. And he had a long jab, and he wasn't able to win the fight or win any rounds. However, it's tough when you have a mover with a long jab, flicking jab, who's moving and who can take some shots. You know, if anything, Garcia pressed the fight, but the guy fought to survive. So it will be difficult to look good against that type of fighter. If you have a certain level of fighter, a competent fighter who's just fighting to survive, there are guys who know how to go 12 rounds. They may not win, but that's a tough matchup. Ultimately, I just want to point that out because To Go was actually an eliminator for the WBO. He was going to be an eliminator anyway, so it's not like he's a complete tomato can just because he's not popular. So this person says, Cruz would run Ryan out of town. He is a body specialist and too low for Ryan's wild left hooks. Since both semi-struggle making weight at 135, maybe they can meet at 140 or 138 like Ryan's last fight. So I don't want to go off on a tangent too much. You know, this post goes on to talk about the rest of the fighters at 140. I want to keep the focus on Cruz and Garcia. So Cruz is a body specialist, but again, he's going to have to close distance. Now I'm going to do a film breakdown that'll be forthcoming, but Cruz has to sell out a bit to get to Garcia's chin and to get to his body. And for better or worse, Ryan Garcia is a one-trick pony in a sense that he automatically defaults to his left hook. Now, if you can bait that left hook, that would be one thing. So you would have to get creative. I think the fighter that beats Ryan Garcia is going to have to get creative as far as getting past that left hook because, you know, you look at it and you say, wow, he doesn't do anything too intricate. He has his chin up high and he throws his left hook, but that's the point. It's a fast left hook. So Ryan Garcia doesn't have to think too much when you pressure him. When you pressure him, he always has his left hook ready, and he's essentially giving up some defense for offense because his attitude is, if you press me, if you come to my body. Ryan Garcia knows that he stands straight up. He knows this, and because he knows that, he has the left hook ready on deck. And if you're a short guy, if you have to reach or anything like that, you run the risk of catching that left hook. Now, you could say that Isaac Cruz is tough to load up on. He makes himself a small target, which he did do against Tank Davis. But, you know, Garcia has, you know, more length, a lot more length, because Davis himself is about 5'5", so it was two short guys. So let's continue on. I think Ryan would stop Cruz, but it would be fireworks for as long as it lasted. That's the way I lean towards, because if you think about it, Cruz is going to have to be mindful of the left hook. I think we have to agree with that. And I don't think that Garcia's left hooks are wild. I think if anything against Luke Campbell, who did give him some resistance, Garcia actually was able to make an adjustment in that Luke Campbell is a smart guy. He's retired now, but he's a technically proficient fighter who was looking out for the left hook, and he had some success. But again, Campbell's a taller guy. He's one of the few guys, or was one of the few guys at lightweight who could match, you know, Ryan's length. So he was able to throw a southpaw straight left and land some shots. But when Campbell was looking out for that left up top, Garcia brought it down low. Now, I will say against Cruz, it wouldn't be in his best interest to go to the body too much because Cruz is already a short guy. So I see Garcia utilizing his height and reach even more so. He'll have his head, you know, up in the air even further away from Cruz. So Cruz would need to close the distance. And Garcia throws whipping shots. And if he's squared up, he being Isaac Cruz, if he's squared up and advancing forward, there's nothing to say that Garcia won't, you know, make another adjustment to maybe throw uppercuts. You know, if Cruz has his guard up against the hooks and he's shrinking himself, making himself a small target, it's just going to be difficult. So now it says, because you win rounds against a still unproven tank at 135 doesn't make you world class. Scraping by a shot to pieces Vargas isn't exactly world class now, is it? There's only 3 guys at 135 who have proved themselves at 135 to be considered world class. That's Loma, Teo, and Cambo. So that being Lomachenko, Teofimo Lopez, and George Kambosos. Cruz is a good journeyman at best. I wouldn't say that. That's a bit harsh. And it's funny, too, because if you think about it, there are literally thousands of fighters in any given weight class. So to say that 3 are world class, I mean, even by default, if you want to say it's all relative, then the top 10 would have to be of some caliber. Even if you are one of those people who, are nostalgic and you feel like, oh, the boxers of yesteryear were so much better. I mean, by default, the fighters who are here are the fighters who are here. So the ones that we're talking about, believe me, we're talking about them for a reason, because there's literally thousands and thousands of other fighters. But anyway, Ryan won't be able to keep Cruz off him and will get slumped against the ropes in 7. Now, I do believe that Cruz would have to press the pace. He would have to push the pace. And if he is going to get Ryan, he would have to have the stamina to be relentless. The problem is that I could see Garcia building up a lead and then being able to hang on to win a decision, to be honest. Cruz, so far he's shown himself to have a chin, but I believe he would expose himself, or he has to expose himself too much. And being so short at 5'4", he would have to literally put on a Joe Frazier type performance, like in the first fight with Ali, where he just walked through hellfire and brimstone to push the pace. So that's the sort of fight that he would have to fight. And ultimately, I see more ways for Garcia to win than Cruz. So nobody was impressed with Ryan's last fight. 0, not one boxing fan. He needs to prove himself a lot more before fighting someone like Cruz. Ultimately, that goes both ways to me. There's not so much depth. I mean, according to some critics who would say there's only 3 elite, people in the division, that would mean a lot of guys would need to prove themselves, because there literally aren't enough elite fighters if you go by that logic. I don't. So let's look at this one. Garcia has the potential to wipe out everyone at 135 and under. He has the star power to land meaningful fights. His head isn't in the sport. Perhaps. I mean, he says that he's back dedicated, so we shall see. So let's go to page 3. So this is how the face-off would look, but a little more striking. Ryan Garcia is 5'10". Isaac Cruz is 5'4". Ryan may be biting off more than he can chew. We know that his most impressive KOs have come against stationary, come-forward opponents, and that is Isaac Cruz's style. Yes, indeed. And you'll also see this graphic. This was early on. This was actually before Garcia made a quantum leap of sorts. He struggled with a solid journeyman in Carlos Morales, but he was young. And this was early on in his career, and these other guys are professional fighters. So Garcia was able to win a majority decision, but Morales fought a great fight, and you see he's also tall. Isaac Cruz is not that. So I believe, too, that Garcia is more polished in dealing with pressure fighters. You don't see the footage now, but I think of Romero Duno in that he has a similar stature to Isaac Cruz. I'm not saying that Duno is Cruz's caliber, but it's that same type of fighter where he was a short guy who had no choice but to try and close the distance. So this person says, what potential are you talking about? His defense is the worst I've ever seen from any top prospect in years. Hell, maybe ever. He walks straight in, chin up behind no jab. See, that's the thing. I don't believe that Garcia's defense is so terrible. It's simple, but so far it's worked for him. And I believe it'll have to be a tall guy to exploit Garcia. It would have to be someone who can touch him from distance. But a pressure guy, it seems as though Garcia's entire game plan or his skill set is designed to counteract short guys. Hey, but anyway, that's all I got for right now. Y'all take it easy.